Hey, this is Nica Montford, aka Tech Savvy Diva.
And yo, this is Terrance Gaines, aka Brother Tech.
And welcome to the Snob OS Show, the show for Apple snobs, where we talk all things Apple and then some. We are back for another week of the Snob OS Show. And before we get into all of the latest Apple news, we definitely want to take a quick moment to thank you all for tuning into our show and allowing us to bring you this show. If you want to get a little bit of extra bang for your podcast listening, you can become a Patreon supporter. That gives you access to our exclusive Discord channel, gets you access to listen to the show live and early, and gets you some exclusive content. So if you want to know anything about getting yourself set up with that, you can head on over to patreon.com/snoboscast. And with that, we are going to go ahead and jump into this week's show. We're going to kick it off with the lowdown, where we talk all things Apple. Now, this story is probably going to take up most of the time for the lowdown this week, but it's a pretty, I think, telling, a good forecast of where we may be going with digital media and digital devices. So the EU, the European Union, we've talked about them before. They've sued Apple. They have a couple, suits against Apple going on, a couple against Meta, a couple against Google. The EU is no joke when it comes to going after big tech. But I think they have maybe have gone a little bit too far with this latest thing, and maybe pushing some of these big tech companies to say, well, you know what, we may just not sell in your market. So there's this thing called the Digital Markets Act, and this was established by the EU. And when it first came out, it was pretty vague, but people could tell it could be a thing, especially infringing on privacy for these different companies. And a lot of this goes around, we want to protect our consumers. We want to make sure that they, don't get taken advantage of by these big bad tech companies who are just out to gobble up all their money, gobble up all their data. Well, with this Digital Markets Act, they finally released, I believe it was yesterday, some specifics around what they expect from Apple. And this is solely applies to Apple. It hasn't been stated that it applies to anyone else, but this is what within this act, this is what they expect from Apple. So they provided and they expect these procedures for Apple regarding the iPhone's interoperability with third-party connected devices. So you think of your watch, your headphones, any other digital devices
Bluetooth
that
speaker.
you have. Anything that you have that can connect to your iPhone. Think of it, any external device that can connect to your iPhone. And, like when they talked about the third-party app store, how big of a deal that was. Well, this is on the hardware end of things, not on the software end of things, like it was with the app store. Well, they are expecting third-party integrations to be implemented by Apple. Here's a rundown of what they are expecting to happen on these integrations. They want Apple, and again, this is solely for Apple. They don't expect this from Google, Huawei, Pixel, Samsung. This is strictly for Apple. This is what they're telling Apple they have to do business essentially in the EU. Giving third-party devices access to iOS notifications, as well as a way for the company to make like-for-like competitors AirDrop, file sharing, AirPlay streaming. So basically, they want to give, say, a Pixel the same access that Apple has natively for iOS notifications, AirDrop, and AirPlay streaming. Also, they want to allow connected devices like third-party smartwatches. I think I just saw today that a company just came up with their own version of the Apple Watch, and it runs like Pebble OS. It's supposed to be like a generic version of the Apple Watch.
Well, actually, it's the other way around. Pebble was the first smartwatch. Yeah, I had one. This is back in 20 2013, 2014, I want to say. The first smartwatch was the e-ink. It was the e-ink display. And
where you could see the blocks for where it did the digital.
Yeah. You could change you could change the watch faces. You could get text message notifications. It wasn't getting the email, wasn't doing all the fancy app notifications. It would synchronize the time with your phone. You could get text messages and some other basic things. So fast forward, Apple drops their Apple Watch, and then Pebble's like, yeah, nah. So now they're kind of making a comeback.
They are.
Because of the fact that people want to have other options for smartwatches. But even Pebble, I read a story to where they are coming up against butting their head against Apple and the iPhone because of this specific reason that Apple has locked down their devices to where ain't too much interoperability. With some headphones, you can connect headphones, you can connect Bluetooth speakers, and then that is it.
Well, if the EU has it their way and Apple actually complies, allowing these third-party connected devices like the smartwatch, full access to the iOS notification system, as well as background execution privileges, which I think is a big one because that's giving you access to the back end and to the actual execution of the OS. So basically they want these third-party smartwatches to act the same way that the Apple Watch works with the iPhone.
Sure.
In the headphone space, they want headphone makers to be giving access to system features that support AirPods, like proximity, auto pairing, and automatic audio switching. It also says that other kinds of connected devices must also be able to make equivalent features to systems and services like AirDrop and AirPlay. The final thing, they expect automatically provided access to Wi-Fi network information, to accessories, enable high bandwidth peer-to-peer Wi-Fi connections, and they want to open up the NFC chip to communicate, data like, credit cards, all those things. If you think of Apple Pay, they want all of that to be connected to third-party devices. So a couple more things before I finally get to the question that I'm trying to ask you. Some other expectations that comes with this digital Markets Act is this applies not just to the current features that Apple has. This applies to everything else too. Anything in the future is expected to follow this mandate. All features, this is the funny thing, all of these features, all this stuff that they just said that Apple has to do, they want to be provided by Apple for free for any type of connected device. So the onus is on Apple to pay for any type of additional infrastructure needed to connect to any third-party device. I mean, any. No matter how complex or how simple, you have to make it work with all these devices in addition to your own. And the other thing is they are expecting Apple to make the relevant frameworks and APIs available at the same time as they arrive on Apple platforms. And they don't want third-party access to be launched later. So typically when Apple does stuff, it goes to Apple products first. And anything else that it needs to work with, we'll kick the can down the road. Nope. If you have a new feature dropping on Apple devices, at the same time they drop for Apple devices, you got to drop them for everybody else too. It don't matter if it's 5, 10, 15 different OSs or devices. You got to make them outside of Apple. They all have to work. So they gave a timeline for this as well in this procedures. So third-party support for iOS notifications, they expect those to go into beta by the end of this year meaning 2025, with the full rollout in 2026. So my question is, one, has the EU completely lost their mind? And two, do you think Apple is going to agree to this?
The EU has not lost their mind. Um, the worst you can do is ask. You know, the worst answer you're going to get is no. And the EU may be able to leverage or push or whatever the case may be, Apple to consider some of these things going forward. Will Apple give in to all of this? No, they will fight it simply because when you were reading up all the things in my mind, that just screamed security, security, security,
Mm-hmm.
security, security. You letting anybody's device connect to an iPhone for all these things that you mentioned screams security. Waiting, a hacker or somebody is waiting on some rinky dink Rudy Poot company to put
Mm-hmm.
out a device that connects to an iPhone with terrible security. The hacker hacks the device that's connected to an iPhone or a Mac or an iPad, and then now that gives them some sort of new access that Apple then also has to spend millions and millions of dollars trying to patch, fix, whatever the case may be. Apple has prided itself on being a data, keeping customers' data safe as possible. It ain't impregnable,
Mm-hmm.
but doing the best they can for security. Now, the other side of that is Apple does make it hard for third-party companies to connect to their devices. Think of HomeKit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trying to find HomeKit compatible devices has always been, and it will be for the foreseeable future, a challenge. It ain't impossible. It's going to be a challenge because Apple has these specific requirements, and third party companies, like you said, this is where you mentioned they have to do it for free.
Mm-hmm.
Apple charges, I don't know if it's a licensing fee, I don't know if it's a one-time fee, I don't know if it's a whatever. But in order for a company to come to Apple and say, hey, we want to connect to your HomeKit to be able to provide customers with the ability to clap 3 times and the speaker puts out a fart noise or something.
Mm-hmm.
Apple's like, no, you need to do this, 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 this. They got this long laundry list. They got all these specifications, and you got to pay. Companies are like, nah, I don't want to do that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So as a result, it's harder for me, an end user that loves Apple, that uses Apple HomeKit, to find devices. Now, if you're asking me which one do I choose, I'm choosing the devices that are compatible because I know that they have gone through Apple's tests to make the device as secure as possible. Again, it's not 100%, but as secure as possible. Apple, the EU ordering Apple to do this is going um, to unload a whole new set of problems that Apple will then have to figure out. They got to figure out standards. They've got to, because the story mentions that they want Apple to use other standards outside of AirPlay, and there was the other one, AirPlay and AirDrop. That's the two.
Mm-hmm.
Those are Apple's specific standards that anybody that wants to utilize that has got to go through Apple. Now, I ain't
Mm-hmm.
saying Apple's shaking them down or nothing like that, but think of AirTags, right? Those use AirDrop. They use a combination of Bluetooth, NFC, and I think they also use AirDrop, right?
Mm-hmm.
That gives Apple the ability to lock down these devices, but other companies can use it, like Tile can use. I
Mm-hmm.
think Google has some tags that they have worked directly with Apple to make sure that they fit Apple's specifications in order to be used. This thing that EU is doing is going to water that down and makes it harder for Apple to control their end users' data. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
the main thing. Apple wants to make sure users can rest assured your data is safe with us.
Yeah.
EU ordering Apple to do all that is going to compromise this, so much so to where Apple may push back on a lot of this, if not all of it.
Yeah. Two things that really kind of annoy me about this is one, there is zero expectation for Google to allow iPhones to connect to their network, into their ecosystem to use some of their features. There's no expectation of that. That's the first thing.
Amazon
Amazon,
or
anybody. This is only one way, and it seems, I don't know, I could be wrong, or maybe something else is coming down the pipeline, but it seems to be targeted specifically for Apple for, I don't know if it's political motivation or money or whatever the case may be. It
Well, Apple's the
seems
big dog.
very targeted.
Yeah, Apple's the big dog. I would assume the little bit of market share that Apple has in the EU, I'm pretty sure they dominate the field, you know, when Google and Android Google and Samsung and all these other Android devices are far second. They're fighting for, you know, eighth place
Second
or whatever
place,
the case. Right. What I think Apple will probably do, what I would assume Apple would do is maybe two things. First thing to do is probably limit their footprint in the EU if and only if they can increase their footprint in India and in China, right? America's not on good terms with China right now due to reasons.
Orange
reasons. So Apple may be trying to increase their footprint in places like India. You know, they're building factories over there. India's making Apple products. You know, India is crazy Android
and the huge population. It's a huge population as it relates to EU.
But the huge population is Android over in India. So Apple may look at, all right, we are going to focus our efforts in India and minimize their footprint in the EU, you know, so they don't have to go through all these hoops because there's less demand. That's just an idea for one. Number two, what Apple may do, and I saw somebody put this in a note in the comments somewhere, they may make two phones. They'll make an American version. They'll make an EU version. The EU version is going to be more expensive. Not even stricter. It's going to be open. You know, Apple's going to have their, you know, big brick wall.
Yeah.
But at the same time, in order for them to comply to all the things that EU wants to do, the phone is going to be dumb expensive. Now, we already think iPhones are expensive already, right? Imagine having to buy an EU phone that costs the end user, the customer, more money, because what EU said is they expect Apple to do all this with no extra money coming from developers, manufacturers, anybody that wants to integrate with Apple's products. They shouldn't have to pay any extra money for licensing to get the standard approved, Apple approved signature or stamp on their products.
So they're going to pass the price, the charge on to the consumer.
Exactly. They're going to,
and the consumer's like, wait, ain't nobody asked for this.
Right. And then they're going to complain to the heads at EU, and EU's going to be like, And then don't forget, the European Union had that whole thing with Brexit. So Apple's like, all right, are y'all sure y'all got y'all shit together first before y'all come telling us what to do with our shit?
And they don't.
Right. So, you know, I don't think Apple, all that to say, I don't think Apple is that worried. They do mention in the story that in collaboration with Apple, they have agreed to or is partnering with them to do something. And I think that's going to be the extent of it. It ain't going to be, you know, EU putting all these orders or requests in and Apple's just going to say, yes. Give us some time or whatever the case may be. I think they're going to, you know, show a good faith try.
They're going to play the game a little bit.
Yeah, sure. You know, Apple did it with this administration playing the game a little bit. So they're going to do the same with the EU.
Yeah. And to wrap this up, Apple did finally make an official statement regarding these expectations. And Apple said, quote, "Today's decision wraps us in red tape, slowing down Apple's ability to innovate for users in Europe and forcing us to give away our new features for free to companies who don't have to play by the same rules. It's bad for our products and for our European users. We will continue to work with the European Commission to help them understand our concerns on behalf of our users." So basically saying, we can talk about it, but I don't know how much we're going to be about it.
They're going to make a good faith, you know, attempt. Yeah. And then that's pretty much where it's going to be. And then EU has to decide if they want to go up against Apple and be okay with the repercussions, right? If Apple decide to pull out of Europe, now, of course, that's a cut off your nose to spite your face.
Right.
That's the type of person I am. So if I was running Apple, I'd be like, all right, do what you got to do.
Do what you got to do. And the iPhone 16 will be, I think, what did we get the last
17.
update? iOS 8, iOS 18.3. That's the last update you'll get from us, friends. Enjoy your iPhones.
Right.
Thank you and good night. Next up, this made me a little sad because when this particular app was announced with the launch of iOS 16, I was super excited because it helped me cut away some of the additional apps that I had that did the same thing. So Apple's much heralded, in my opinion, Passwords app was exposed to vulnerabilities at launch for 3 months before anybody caught on. So a serious HTTP bug left Passwords, the app, users vulnerable to phishing attacks for nearly 3 months, starting at the initial release. So security researchers at MISC, that looks
MYSK.
like MIS, I'm saying MISC, first discovered the flaw after noticing, and this was on their iPhones, that they noticed that the iPhone app privacy report, because it gives you a rundown of what websites you've been pinging, it showed that the Passwords app had been contacted by 130 different websites over an insecure HTTP traffic. So that's the king. If it's pinging that many, it's like, what's going on? But for it to ping that many over an unsecure HTTP protocol is a bit nerve-wracking. So after they did a little bit more digging, a little bit more investigation, they found that not only was the app fetching account logos and icons over HTTP, it was defaulted to opening password reset pages using the unencrypted protocol. So essentially what that was doing is the Passwords app was pinging constantly over a think of when you log into your bank account, HTTPS. You see the little lock that lets you know that it's a secure website and your data has a relative expectation of security. Well, that's what was happening. This Password app was hitting this, and it was going traffic both ways, unsecured, and it was defaulting to the unencrypted protocol. So this was patched very quietly without a lot of hubbub, because I don't remember them talking about this. I don't think they probably would because it looks bad. But it was patched last year, I believe in December, when 18.2 came out. And Apple is just now saying, oh, hey guys, yeah, by the way, we fixed it. But what had happened was we was making you vulnerable to phishing attacks with the Password app. So I don't know how this was missed, because this is something that should be fairly standard that you check to ensure that the security certificates are there. But you're our resident mobile device guru person. So should I not have been surprised by this?
I am surprised that Apple would make this sort of like simple blunder, right?
Yeah.
You think about this as far as just basic security. It is commonly known that if you go to a website, if you just open up your browser, type in a website, and you see HTTP colon whatever.com, common knowledge, just based on us evolving, knows that
being on the internet for all these years.
Being on the internet knows that, all right, HTTP is sketchy. HTTPS, the S, whether actual or just made up, the S stands for security. Right. So you assume that if I'm going to a website and you click on the browser and you click on the URL and you see HTTPS, you can rest assured that your data is a little bit, your traffic, your activities, whatever, is a little bit more secure than HTTP. That's been a thing for a long time. So It's surprising to me that Apple would even allow something as important as passwords to be vulnerable over HTTP because they were pinging and sending traffic over this insecure HTTP. I'm surprised that Apple even considered this, let alone executed it on something as important as passwords. I could see if they was doing it over Apple Music. I could see if they was doing
Photos,
it over,
maybe.
or maybe not even photos, like
Well, no,
something
because you
like,
get some photos. That's, yeah.
exactly. I don't care if anybody cracks into my phone and steals the music that I'm streaming. It ain't mine anyway. So
I don't own this.
right. So I'd be surprised. I would be like, well, it's less secure. Nobody cares. It's music, whatever the case may be. HTTP, I get it. You probably the easy way around. You wanted to quickly do this, so who cares, right? With passwords, nah, man. I need you to lock my shit down.
Lock it down.
Right. And if I know, just looking at this and saying, ooh, HTTP, I would fully expect some Apple engineer, some Apple cybersecurity person saw this and was like, wait, what? And then
How did
Apple
this pass?
right. And then Apple would have like, hey, man, hey, shh, don't worry about that. Mind your business. And then for somebody to pick it up and they'd be like, oh, but we patched it. It's like, how was this even out in the first place? That'd be my question.
Yeah. And that's why I was like, and for it to get all the amount of toll gates and checkpoints you have before a piece of software is moved into production, there are specific sections in your kind of production plan to consider all of these different security features. And for this to slip through and to
I don't even think
run,
it slipped through. For it to be so basic, I think somebody at Apple made the conscious decision
they forgot.
to do this and said, we'll worry about the consequences later. That's what I think. They said,
And
hey,
for it to run for 3 months straight before it's patched.
right. I think they was like, man, it ain't, don't look, it's all right. We be all right.
It's a password apps. It's
Yeah.
just people's basic life,
I
stored here.
Because I can't think of any other explanation outside of they won't notice.
Right.
What is the Jedi mind? What is the Jedi thing? It's like there is no droids there is no password security, and I'm supposed to be like, yeah, you're right. That's how
You're right.
because there's no way that somebody at Apple wouldn't have caught this and be like, hey man, this is not the way to do it.
So who gonna fix this?
Right.
So yeah, it's patched now. So I'll say for those of you out there who don't necessarily believe in updates or, I'll get around to it, make sure your devices are at least running 18.2 to make sure that this bug is patched on your phone. Because if you like me, I use really complex passwords that there's no way I can remember. And so it helps to have, password generators, password storage software to be able to use. So tip of the day, make sure that your phone is at least on 18.2. Okay, the last quick thing. Since I will never get my AirPower mat that I was promised, Apple has said, you know what, we'll throw you a little bone. We'll give you a little something to make you not feel so bad. Apple now sells a 2-story AirPower, which is in quotes, charger. So it's called a Zen's Quattro Wireless Charger Pro 4. It comes in 2 colors, silver and white. It's exclusively sold only at Apple. You can charge up to 4 devices simultaneously. It has a 65 watt power adapter that provides the energy for the quad MagSafe charging pads to support each 15 watt charging speed, and it costs $150. So it's like think of a little tower almost. It has shelves, even better. That you can kind of just put your devices on. With the AirPower mat, you're supposed to be able to, just put these things just haphazardly anywhere on this mat. supposed to have this power distribution where it knows where to send the most charging to and how to equalize it out if you have more than one. This is not that, but I think this is the closest thing to it. And it's probably the only thing we'll ever see. And I just had to mention it because it looks like this is the closest thing that we'll get to the originally stated AirPower mat.
I hope not, because this thing is ugly. This is like, ugh. It's like, what is this?
It's like a mini shelf.
It's got like the regular shelf on the bottom that you would think of a mat that you can put your phone on one side, put your AirPods on the other side, watch in the middle. But then on top of that, it's got another shelf on the top to where you can add more stuff. And it's like, what? Maybe, I don't know. So I'm trying to talk myself into this thing, right? I have a personal phone and I have a work phone. So that's 2 things. I also have AirPods. That's 3 things. I also have an Apple Watch. That's 4 things. If I absolutely positively needed to charge all 4 of those things at the same time, and the only outlet I had was this one outlet to where this power shelf is connected to, then sure, I guess. But it's $150 and it's made by Zens.tech. Who is that?
No clue.
I don't want to say
Never heard of it.
I don't want to say it, but is this a sign of times to where Apple is like really has their back against the wall and it's like, we need to do something. We need to provide something other than an iPhone, an iPad, a MacBook, and some AirPods. Everything else is kind of like, that's cool. But they're like, Apple's like, we need to really, and y'all chose.
Snazz it up.
Yeah, y'all chose Zens.tech for this Quattro Charger Pro that has shelves. I mean, I guess because there are other weirder looking products out there. If you go on Amazon for a quick search on Amazon, I'm pretty sure you can find some weird looking contraptions that charge up multiple devices. And I guess Apple was like, all right, we're not going to make them look like this, but we're going to make it look like that. So this looks a little bit better, but it's like, ugh, if you ask me.
So they have a second option from Zens that it doesn't have the top shelf. It just has the bottom shelf. And you can charge 3 things on the MagSafe chargers. And you can charge a 4th thing by using a cable. So in the picture for the alternative to the shelves, it basically has it's still made by Zens. It's on the same article from 9 to 5 Mac, and it's called
I see
Zens 4-in-1 charger.
Yeah.
So the other's a Quattro, and this is the Zens 4-in-1 charger.
And that's $150 too.
Yeah.
And this one doesn't look as bad.
It doesn't look as bad.
It still looks goofy looking because it's got this.
It doesn't look like Apple.
Back. Yeah,
it's the color maybe, but it doesn't look like something Apple would make.
Right, and I'm thinking that is my biased because it doesn't look like something Apple would make or co-sign, but they are.
But they did. So Zens.tech is a company based out of the Netherlands, and apparently they make a range of charging solutions, and they've done this for years.
Yeah, I was on their website looking at stuff because I'm like, who is this? So I went to their website. It looks like these products, I guess they kind of look like if Apple bought Belkin. If you're familiar with Belkin, they make these type of chargers and adapters and power banks and all this stuff. It looks like Apple bought Belkin and said, this is our line as well. This is what it kind of reminds me of. But still, like you said, it doesn't fit the Apple aesthetic. And it's just weird. It's just weird. I'll just leave it at that. It's just weird.
Yeah. And I think this is our charging pad option.
I guess.
I won't be buying it, but if there are some of you who are into this kind of thing, it's out there for $150. Have at it.
I guess.
That is going to ruffle the lowdown. Let's head on over to second string. So back in June, 2 astronauts were set off to take an 8-day test mission flight. Well, 9 months later, they just landed back. Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams, they are 2 veteran NASA astronauts and retired Navy test pilots. And they went out on this mission on as Starliner's first crew. And again, like I said, this was supposed to be 8 days, and it's now 9 months later, and they just dropped back from outer space on yesterday. So this has been highly politicized with, people saying we wanted to go and get them, but they wouldn't let us. That's all conjecture. Apparently, there had been issues after these astronauts had gotten there, issues with Starliner's propulsion system that led to cascading delays to their return home. So it was a bunch of issues. It was a bunch of things that got these 2 astronauts to where they are. I think there was one instance where they had a way home, but then the way home that they had started acting funny and they didn't want to risk it. Then we had an election and an inauguration, and then they were busy with all this other stuff. And now they're just getting around to saying, oh, we have those 2 people that have been stuck up there for 9 months. So we should probably bring them back home and, get some good publicity out of this. So it took them 17 hours on a Crew Dragon spacecraft that had 2 other astronauts. I believe one was a Russian cosmonaut as well, that came down from the International Space Station and took that 17-hour trip back to Earth. Glad to say that all astronauts are back on this big floating rock with gravity. And if I were them, I'd be like, I'm done. I'm out.
If I was NASA, I would be checking their chests to make sure they ain't got no xenomorph aliens on the inside. For they've been out there so long. They've been out there too long. Ain't no telling what happened to them people out there. So
and I saw some pictures of them making their own version of a pizza because everything is freeze dried. And I'm like, I'm expecting to go on a little 8-day work trip. And you mean to tell me 9 months later I'm still here? Somebody could have had a baby by the time I got back. Are you serious?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm glad they're back, because every once in a while I would be like, man, the astronauts still out there, and they would still be out there. Yeah. So glad they are back. Hopefully they haven't went crazy or got some bacteria attached to them. They ain't got venom, Spider-Man venom.
Something goop stuck to the back of their head.
Right.
Leeching off their brain.
Right. There were some aliens attached to their face or something like that. You check on them.
Did. I don't know if you know, but they did say that NASA was getting some funky signal from a part of the universe, outer space, whatever, that they hadn't heard before. So I don't know if they hitched a ride back. I don't know.
All I'm saying is any movies that I've watched to where astronauts was stuck in space, bad things happen every single time.
Right. And I just be like, dear sweet aliens, you don't want to come over here. You don't want this. Stay where you are. I'm sure it's great. It's not great here. So stay over there with what you got going on, because you don't want none of this, because it's a hot mess. But yeah, I'm glad to say that they are back safe and sound. And, best wishes to them as they recover and reintegrate into society. Could you imagine not walking for 9 months and then you just all of a sudden expected just to be like walk on gravity? Like, no, put me in a wheelchair. You got to push me around for a little bit. I got to make sure my muscles and stuff still work and understand this because it just seems so weird. But yeah, so glad to have them back. And hopefully they have protocols in place so that something like this, if it does happen again, they have options to ensure that people get home 8 days later instead of 9 months, instead of what 200 days later.
Yeah, it was like 280 days or something like that.
Yeah. Glad to have you back, friends. All right, let's head on into For the Culture, where we talk what's going on around us. We are in the month of March, and if you are a basketball fan, or if you're even just aware of what's going on around you, even non-basketball people know what March Madness is. March Madness, brackets. People are talking about their brackets. We just finished up Unrivaled, which was the women's professional basketball league for 3-on-3. I watched it. I enjoyed it. Had a ball with that. And I have a group of friends that we usually do. I have one group of friends that we normally do fantasy football with, and I have another group of friends that we normally do basketball with. And our teams, our brackets are set up in our groups, and we've gotten our brackets in for both men's and women's. And yeah, as we go into the next maybe 3 weeks, because the tournament actually goes into the beginning of April. Yeah, it seems like to me, college basketball, women's professional basketball as of late, professional basketball has been really great. But to me, the NBA doesn't have the same zhuzh and vibration as the college kids do. And I guess maybe because they're trying to get to the pros to make the money. Yeah. But they have a little bit more of that fire in them. And it's usually a good time. It's a lot of fun. And it's always, for me, it's always good to have the bracket and to see, your points go up or you're winning. And then when you don't, it's like, oh man, and upsets and all these different, timelines isn't the word I'm looking for. All the different kind of stories that come out of this. So are you a March Madness bracket type of person, or you just kind of watch to enjoy?
I'm not. I don't watch college sports, with the exception of when the NCAA football championship, like that Final Four thing, that piqued my interest before. That has piqued my interest more than before, because when before it was just like, all right, some people voted, this team is the best. I was like, that's stupid. So now that they've introduced NIL, that gives the athletes ability to make a little bit more money. And they've introduced the playoff / championship thing. Now I'm cozying up to it. Right. Same thing with NCAA basketball. Don't really watch it. Don't know any of the stories. Don't know any of the players up until March Madness, when I'm looking for these big teams to get upset
to take
by
a
this
tumble.
Little bitty no name team out of nowhere comes in and makes all this ruckus, beats a couple teams. Now I'm like, all right, I'm into it now. But then as soon as those teams fall off and the Cinderella stories get axed, and I'm back out. So I tend to watch the games to where the Cinderella team, that's the team everybody's voting for. I'm in it because I love an upset. I love an underdog. But outside of that, it's like, it's on while I'm working, but I ain't really turned my head around.
Well, I know for the men's, specifically, there are a couple of HBCUs that are in there.
Yep.
I think Mississippi State just won their play-in. I think Norfolk State was already, they're a 16 seed, so they were already in. So it's good, to see, especially when the underdogs kind of come in and
blow up these brackets. That's what I like.
And just to see like these kids, like, because you play all season to get, the best position possible. But after that, it's one and done. So you
Mm-hmm.
could, gone undefeated, the whole season and then
Mm-hmm.
get knocked off. And it's just like, that's the way the cookie crumbles. So it's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of fun. And they don't call it March Madness for nothing, because when the brackets blow up, everybody is just, besides themselves. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a nice, good, wholesome, fun time. It's another one of those things, as we talked about earlier, ways to entertain yourselves and, kind of take your focus a little bit off of, whatever craziness is going on around you. So I'm looking forward to it. I did my bracket yesterday, and I don't know if it's closed or not yet, but I've been kind of waffling back and forth on one of the decisions that I made. And I don't know. I haven't changed it because I think that's going to be the way it plays, but it hurts my feelings for it to play out that way. But we'll see if I'm right or if I'm wrong once this all wraps up. All right, let's head on over to the hookup for our tech tip of the week.
Yeah, so I am getting back into exercising for the umpteenth time. This time is the last time, so I say. And so I'm, going into the Apple Fitness Plus app. I'm going into the Apple Workouts app and starting to customize and explore all the different exercises and programs that are available. One of the things that I would advise everybody to do if they are looking to get into Apple Fitness Plus or just the Apple Workouts app, in order to calibrate your Apple Watch, it is suggested, and this is my tip for the week, it is suggested that you take a brisk 20-minute walk outside. That, according to Apple, calibrates the Apple Watch. And then once it's calibrated correctly, then if you decide to do on a treadmill in the indoors, if you decide to do an Apple Fitness Plus exercise or workout or program or whatever the case may be, your Apple Watch will be better calibrated to reflect the actual stats. So you think of heart rate, you think of steps, you think of standing, you think of all the things that Apple tracks, Apple Health tracks. Those stats and those stats will be more reflective of actual body and activity if you calibrate it first. So that is my hookup for the week real quick. If you are getting into or getting back into exercising, before you get heavy on watching your rings and trying to close your rings and make sure steps and how long you stand, I would advise just take a walk outside for 20 minutes. Make sure you log it as a 20-minute outdoor walk. That'll better calibrate it so you can get more accurate stats on your fitness journey.
And it's a good thing to go outside and get in the sun and take a nice brisk walk anyway.
Yeah, just make
So
sure
it serves two purposes.
Yeah, but make sure you take your allergy medicine.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this week's show. Brother Tech, where can the people find you?
Sure. You can find me all over the internet at Brother Tech. That's BROTHATECH.
And you can find me at Tech Savvy Diva all over the interwebs. For the show, how can you connect with the show? You can do that by going over to snobblewestcast.com or going to @snobblewestcast on all the social media platforms. Also, you can learn how to connect, to share, and support the show by going to those sites as well, and they'll give you all the details. And with that, we're going to wrap it up, and that's going to be it for this week.
Peace.
Bye, everybody.